Okay, it's 5:45 on October 14th, 2025. We'll call the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting to order.
All right.
Roll call.
Todd Spaeth.
Here.
John will not be here. Emma.
Here.
And Todd Kirking.
Here. Okay, first period for public comment. Doesn't look like anybody's around.
We got a couple people online, Todd. If anybody online wants to make a public comment, they can unmute and jump right in. I think you're good, Todd.
All right, number 3, approval of committee minutes from 9/30/2025.
This is Emma, and I move to approve the minutes.
Todd, I'll second it.
Okay. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, payment of the bills.
Okay, in the original bills, on page 2, I just want to point out that we had payment of $13,501.20 for the comprehensive plan, and that is coming out of the ARPA funds that we had still available and allocated to that. And I think that was about the only thing else that I had to point out in the original bills, unless anybody's got questions.
Nothing here.
Okay, in the additional bills, I just wanted to point out on page 2 there, we had a situation from 2023 that we have an outstanding check for overpayment of taxes for 60240. That went to one of the agencies. It's like a pass-through for payment, and we sent the payment to them. They never forwarded it to the actual taxpayer. So we have voided that check and we're reissuing it directly to the taxpayer at this point, just to clear our books off. So there's not changing anything that we'd already had paid it. It was just a voided check to a different vendor. Then we're also paying the second quarter mobile home fees to the school. On page 4, I wanted to point out on the police detour signs and for the signs by Sean and emergency vehicle systems. This one for 1,036 and 958, you actually at the last council meeting approved one for 1,994. It was made out completely to signs by Sean, which was incorrect. It was on the same voucher. So we caught that. We're voiding that check and reissuing it to the 2 different vendors. So that one is being corrected as well. See, if I'm gone, that's what happens. And let's see. Page 6, Park and Rec, they have purchased the new mower deck to Portland Implement for $2,478.46. I also had a question for Kale. We are paying for a memorial bench. Did we get payment from someone for a memorial bench? Okay, he's saying yes. So the $1,664.62. Then on page 7, in the TID 7, there's some costs in there for the landfill gas mitigation investigation, the DOT for the Walmart intersection for the lights there, and then also the fourth quarter allocation to Community and Economic Development Association for the 550250. Any other questions or anything on any of those?
I'm good. I guess we just need a motion then to pay the bill.
This is how to make a motion to pay the bills.
This is Emma, and I'll second that motion.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Roll call.
Emma?
Aye.
Todd Kirking?
Aye.
And Todd Spaeth?
Aye. All right, agenda item number 5 is the 2025 budget review through August 2025.
So we typically shoot to do these financial reviews on a quarterly basis. So as you can tell, we're late. It's October. And so instead of doing it through June, let's just go ahead and do it through August. And we pulled these numbers in September and give time for the department heads to sort of take a look at it, weigh in. There is always a little bit of a lag of when we have the numbers posted for a month and when we can actually come back and report to you on it. It's about always a month or a month and a half delay. But we'll go through August here and we'll call it a 2/3 review, right? So these are just kind of our general notes that we always see. Just a reminder again, here's kind of general expenses by type, just so that when we do look at these by category, you always know that you really want to hone in on some of the bigger pieces of the pie, like wages and benefits. Contracts for services are the most dominating ones. Here's what it looks like per department. So again, through August, essentially two ways to think about it when you look at these numbers is how much of the year has been expended, right? So when you go through August, it's 2/3 of the year, 8 out of 12 months has been expended. The other way to look at it is how is the trend of expenses matching up versus what it did last year? And between those two things, you can generally get a good feel of, are we on trend? Is something abnormal? I talked with one of the department heads about like the whole point of this exercise is for the department heads to look at their numbers and identify, does this match up with what I've experienced as a department head? Or if it doesn't match up, it means there's a problem, right? And sometimes, as Lori pointed out in the bills just now, the clerks are not infallible. Sometimes things get in the wrong GL. Sometimes bills just don't get paid, or revenue doesn't come in, right? So we do this as a way of catching mistakes. So again, those are the two ways we generally catch mistakes is, again, looking at trends versus how much of the year has been expended and what happened last year. This particular item shows expenses by type and includes capital and grant expenses. And as you'll see, things get really skewed when you start including grants and capital expenses, right? You can see $2 million here, as well as capital projects really inflate numbers and make it hard to judge how we're doing on our operating budget. So when we pull this out, we usually look at it excluding those capital and grant expenses, and you can see that the numbers make a lot more sense. Again, 66% of the year, these numbers as a whole match up with what happened last year, as well as how far into the year that we are. So that's a good first sign. We'll jump right into wages, and you can see here that, and again, I apologize, I think I set a draft of this out, so I'm going to try not to go through every single line. The whole point of me doing that was so that you folks hopefully had a chance to at least peek through it before tonight. But in terms of wages, we're doing pretty darn solid. Everything there, as you can see, is where we'd expect it to be. A couple things to note is that on the fire side, because the administrative assistant position will not be replaced through the end of the year, it's essentially that position is going to be vacant for 3.5 months since mid-September, right? So we will see that end up fairly low, but as of right now, with the payout for leaving and things like that, it's right around that 60, it's a little bit below that 66%. Other than that, you do see down in police that wages are high due to some OT, but they're being offset by being somewhat understaffed in officers for 3 months. And then for public works, Sarah did a good job looking at that as well. It is important to remember that there are stipends in this, and in the budget, the stipends weren't accounted for in wages, they were accounted for in benefits. So that is a good example of where that seems like it's trending a little bit high. But as far as everybody has said in reviewing this, from a wage perspective, we should be at or slightly below our wage budget, except for maybe the library, but as Trina notes there, it's going to be slightly over, and so I don't think it'll be too problematic. Benefits here, again, this is going to look really skewed and is going to seem low because in the budget, the benefits were expected to, is where we expected to see the opt-out stipends, but it's actually in the wages. So this is 8 months of premium. So just to confirm that, and for the most part, everything is sort of as expected. You can see here in particular, you have a couple departments where opt-outs were more prevalent, and you're going to see them being quite a bit below that 66%. In the library, one thing just to note, and we did look at this for the following year in 2026, is that we did have a couple staff come on to retirement. And that does have an impact on the budget. And so they are going to be a little bit over in their retirement budget, but there's not much that can be helped there. All we can do is address it going into the following year. Contract for services in here. I'm going to shrink this just a little bit to make it so we can maybe hopefully fit everything on screen. Okay. Contract for services, again, this is one of the larger ones. The first thing you'll note is that administrative always runs really high towards 100% because a lot of these contracts for services like your accounting and auditing come out in the first portion of the year. And by the time we get to this portion, we're, towards the end, and especially in this one, we have the comprehensive plan for both. Really, that is the we just paid one of the bills today, the consultants, right, for the comprehensive planning. That we didn't budget for that because it was an ARPA payment. So we received the ARPA money many, many moons ago. And so this is just coming out of that fund. For fire, you can see where we're at. I always try to do this to show you when it comes to building permits, this is higher than what we budgeted for in terms of expenses, but you can see the revenue is a good portion higher than that as well. So as long as revenue and expenses exceed, then the net is solid. And the only thing to know is that they haven't gotten through fire inspection yet. But that those fees should be coming out towards the end of the year. Other than that, I did want to note here in Public Works, they're probably one of their bigger line items for contract for services is the waste and recycling contract with GFL. I just wanted to note down here that we have that it's we are about a month behind in terms of the payments on expenses, and between that, and I didn't bring up the numbers for both revenue and expenses, but between the two of them, what we collect from the residents and the businesses and what we've paid out to both the landfill and GFL, we're about $385 to the negative net, which isn't terrible. And the reason for that is because of our tonnage to the landfill. We pay in a per tonnage rate to the landfill, and we estimated about $100 tons per month on average to the landfill. And right now we're just trending slightly above that. It's like 101, 102. And so at $60 a ton, we're over by somewhere between over about $80 a month right now. And again, that's something we've corrected in next year's budget, is trying to keep an eye on what those numbers are. Fuel and utilities is looking really solid. In particular, we had the airport that it says airport utility is now below trend and says that they should end at budget, but they are concerned about utilities in general. It's a fairly utility intensive operation sometimes. And so they are hoping that they do hit budget on it, but we did put a little bit of cushion into their next year's budget just to account for that. Everything else seems fine. City Hall, the library. The only concern is the police department, where they are expected to be about $3,200 over in their fuel budget for this year. And is again something we're trying to address in next year's budget, simply because I think on an annual basis they've been over on fuel. On the good side, Public Works is saving a considerable amount of money through their in-ground storage tank for, I think it's your diesel, Sarah. And so that is creating a lot of dividends for the department already. Go ahead.
Is that something new, the in-ground fuel storage, or have you always had that, or is? You don't have to come up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So this is the first full year
Big
that
savings. Yeah,
we'll
good.
enjoy the savings. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I verify that that's not in-ground? It's above ground, correct? Okay, because when I hear in-ground, that
Oh,
makes
yeah.
our insurance a lot different.
Oh,
And so I wanted to double check that nothing had
Yeah, I
changed.
don't know why I thought it was in-ground, because I know that
Oh.
it's not.
Okay.
either way, we have fuel storage.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good.
Remind me to change that. Okay. Okay, so that's fuel and utilities. Equipment maintenance and supplies, the big note there, as you can see in the administrative budget, we're way over. When we came into the beginning of the year, Mike from MCS Networks had given us an idea of what he thought we might need. And then in January, he actually came in and did a full audit and realized we need a heck of a lot more than what he originally thought. And so we spent about $10,000 of ARPA on that, plus another $2,700 of all of the general city's IT budget. And that is actually over by another 1,800, something to that effect. And so as you can see, like our, for City Hall, we're not a super heavy department on repairs, maintenance, equipment, and supplies. And so when that kind of thing happens, it really makes our budget seem like it ballooned. But the majority of that, again, is offset by ARPA funds. And again, a lot of those IT purchases are across the city. We try to cover, I think, quite a bit in the PD, City Hall. I think there was a few items in streets department, things like that. And then for everybody else, this is kind of the trend, is everybody's basically saying, yep, we're on track. And even if you see like in Public Works or the fire department, if the spending seems low, they sort of seem to wait until the end of the year to make their purchases based on how well they did in the first 10 months. So they do all expect to zero out on those items by the end of the year. And then the only concern is the police department, who is trending to be about $6,000 over budget on a variety of items. And again, part of that is just not budgeting for certain things, right? They've always had office licenses. They've always had US Cellular, but until this year, we haven't necessarily gotten as granular to knowing those things are coming and accounting for them in the budget. And so as a result, you see it this year that they're going to be over in those categories. All right. Last thing, and this is a really small budget. I mean, this accounts for like less than 2% of the overall spending in the city. So when you see really high numbers here, just do understand that it doesn't take much for a budget that's only maybe $3,000 to go, 160% over budget. But there really isn't any surprises here. Again, same story here with the police department. This is a issue that emanated from just, I guess we'll call them errors in the 2024 budget, never being corrected until now the 2026 budget, causing a shortfall of about $3,800. On the good side there is that their training budget is going to be a little bit over, but they're getting quite a bit of state reimbursement for some of that PD training. So that will help offset some of that issue. So those are expenses. Did anybody have any questions on that? Here's just an overview of what it looks like across all departments. Nope. Okay. Revenue, not a ton here. Property taxes, last year we had 100% by this point. We're still at 2/3, and so we're waiting on that final portion of the property taxes to hit. Room tax, go ahead, Lori.
What that is that I haven't done my journal entries to move it from the prepaid from December into this year. And then you'll be at 100%. So it's actually there. It's just not moved.
Room tax, again, last year we ran into an issue where there was a lot of back pay of room tax. So it really made 2024 seem outrageously good, but it included a lot of 2023 payments. In 2025, you can see we're right on target. And we would expect that we're going to hit again. Room taxes is hard to predict on timing. It's just whenever some of the bigger establishments get their payments to us. Something we could work on in the future to get them more regimented. But for now, I don't think Lori and I have any concerns that fees that the taxes aren't being paid. Lot here, The big thing to note again, and I pointed this out back when we identified the issue back in the first quarter, is that we really overswung on the intergovernmental revenue, which is the tax equivalency payment from the water and sewer utilities. That continues to be as we expected it to be from when we did the calculations at the beginning of the year. And essentially, we're going to end up being $40,000 under budget in that category. That particular item has been reassessed, as you would imagine that both Cheryl and I would do for the 2026 budget, and we have a much more conservative number in that budget. Other than that, I'll point this out here. Really all we have in the bank right now for that is the first quarter. So when we get mass transit assistance, that's our grants to help run the taxi cab. There's both state funding and federal funding that come through that. As of the end of August, the only thing there is 1/4 of state funding. So you're 2/3 through the year, but you only have half of a quarter in there. It's going to make it seem pretty small. And the revenue pattern on the taxi cab is probably even worse than the revenue pattern on room tax. Like, it all shows up eventually, but sometimes it's just 8 to 10 months late.
Yeah, we have received all of the state aid at this point from the mass transit. The federal side, we have just now got the grant application for signatures, and once that's all finalized, then they'll start going back and doing at least the first 2 quarters, hopefully, of the federal side of payments. But with the shutdown, I don't know how that'll affect it
right.
either.
Any questions? Okay. Permits, fines, forfeitures, these 2 categories in general are looking pretty sharp, with most of our areas exceeding. This one seems, it's a small item, so I wouldn't be overly concerned. I don't know if some of these miscellaneous items maybe got into street and curb permit, but in general, we don't, collectively, these 2 put together even out in terms of being over and under. And then everything else should be fine, if not better than budget. Public charges for service. Everything is going fairly well here. Municipal court is an interesting beast. Lori, I didn't ask you this ahead of time, but I think they're still working on sorting through that and getting
There's still money coming in from the court that we're putting into that for revenue that we're getting from Vernon County.
Right.
On a monthly basis. So that's what's going in there.
Okay, let's see what else we got here. As you can see, we fared pretty well when it came to recreation income as well. Last year looked quite a bit better. I'd have to talk to Kale about why that last year was at 115. I don't know if some additional donation monies got in there, but at this point, recreation income is, both these categories are doing very well. And then we already talked about where the waste and recycling fees are doing. We'll talk about this when we get to budget as well, but special police services is the DMV fees. Annette and Rick did send me an email sort of speaking to that. They do expect that to currently be at 6,500. I don't know. They didn't necessarily give me an idea of where the end of year would end, but this number is improving a little bit better. But that has been that particular revenue item has been very volatile and hard to get a read on, and so we're trying to redouble efforts with the police department on figuring out where that will end at the end of the year. But right now, it's about 50%. All other revenue. The highlight here is that interest investments. So all the work that we've done with Ellers to make use of dollars we have on hand before we need to spend them has really paid dividends. You can see here that we're $42,000 and only budgeted for 19 in revenue for our general fund investment. Then there's another 43,000 here that comes from, I believe that one's the fire station proceeds that we invested until we spent it over to Keller. And then there was one more item, I think it was maybe in a different category, general fund. But there was one more category of, was it other? Oh, it was in other financing. But essentially, there's one other investment category that's in an other financing that is also at around $40,000. So we've done really well with having our money earn money. Here's where we sit in terms of cash on hand and investments. And this, we did this as of yesterday. So for August, you can see here where our is as of August, but I had Lori update it just because this graph only tells part of the story. So as of yesterday, we have about 2.6 million in cash on hand, and then these are all the balances of our investment accounts. So these are all near cash, they're very liquid, and so whenever we need to pull them in order to pay a bill, we can pull them and pay a bill. So Lori and I will continue to do that and touch base with Justin before we yank money out of those investments account, just making sure that we're making the right decision at that time in order to not allow our cash on hand to dwindle past a point we're comfortable with. But we've also learned that you don't want to pull things out of the investment until you absolutely have to, because once you pull it out, you can't put money back in. Okay. And so we're going to try to let some of that stuff ride as long as possible.
What's the reason from June to July and August that the cash value went up considerably? Okay.
The way our cash works, it's always at a bowl. And that's when we were doing some of the financing and stuff for some of those big projects. So we were getting low on cash in June. And then we started pulling in, like, was it in July that I realized that we sold the property at the Hanson Farm? And or was that in August? But we ended up with a huge cash flow between the bond proceeds and then sale of the Hanson Farm that really spiked it up. And then we moved that 500,000 out of the general fund to the investment. And if that's actually accurate, Nate, we've actually made $7,000 on it in interest already
For which
for
one?
that 500,000 that we put in the general fund investments. So that's pretty good for only a couple of months that we did that. So,
Okay.
But yeah, it dipped pretty low there where we were a little nervous and not trying to pull it from the investments if we could, and the timing of when we got reimbursed for the fire station projects and stuff. We were trying to play the game of
Oh, yeah, I remember now. Yeah.
when we would
Yeah.
get it and not have to
Yep,
spend.
that's right.
It was about 1.8 million was our first reimbursement
Right.
for
Yeah.
of
Okay.
cash from the.
Yeah.
So
So we were on a daily basis watching that
Yeah.
to see if we needed to move it.
Yep.
all right. Let's see. So then here's just where the revenue and expenses versus budget look, right? So eventually by the end of the year, if we budget super accurately, then both that green and that blue bar should meet up with that black bar, right? That's the general idea. And so as Lori said, and this I did try to do this without the capital and the grants in there. Otherwise it would really skew the data. So it seems to show that we're on track here. And then there's just the last little overview that shows where we're at in terms of both revenue expenses. This one does include the capital, so you can see the numbers are quite a bit larger once you start adding in all the money for the fire station. But for you guys, I guess the big things at this point is overall things seem pretty good. Financial outlook appears positive. We're really doing quite well on our expenses. There are a couple areas that I would say we just didn't budget properly, and as a result, we're overspending. But the biggest thing continues to be that miss on the intergovernmental revenue. That utility tax equivalency payment is just way low by $40,000. On the flip side, that investment and interest revenue is already $85,000 above annual budget, which obviously offsets the miss on the other revenue. But again, the goal there with those investments was just to rebuild our cash position, so a $40,000 miss is still a $40,000 miss. There's a couple other revenues that we want to take a look at, and I didn't mention this earlier, but I'll mention it now, is that a couple of the fire department's revenues, fire rent, is a conversation that they need to have with the townships, as well as just double checking that the township's payment on salary, as well as other expenses, maintenance, repairs and stuff like that are accurate. And I don't think Joy or Chad had a chance to give me of like, what is the balance due from those townships?
I believe they're up to date. I know that, well, Chad's here, so,
Sure, go
Yeah.
ahead, Chad. I didn't see you sneak back in.
So yeah, two things. So the rent, we hadn't sent them a bill on the rent, so the $12,000 per year. Part of that had to do with, I was thinking that we were gonna charge them partial year's rent until they move, or until we moved in, and they would start paying that utilities piece of it, if you remember right. I talked to Nate and I was misunderstanding that. So we got to send them a bill, I guess, is the answer. So that'll go out, I would assume, in the next month and get caught up on that. So that should be coming. As far as what they've been billed for and what we've spent, including September bills went out, is $11,228.71. So that's what's still yet to come in for revenue, versus what the city has spent on their behalf. So that puts that percentage probably quite a bit
Is that
closer.
through August, or that's through? You said
That includes September.
September.
Yeah. We got. Yep, because there's about $5,000 for September, and then one of the townships is behind by 6,200 or so, give or take. So that trends. I mean, there's nothing red flagging or anything like that, but they're typically behind about a month or so. The one gets behind about 2 months. So
And it will end up being lower on the salary share by the end of the year because of Daisy's position. The townships was paying into 18% of that position. And so with that position being vacant for 3.5 months.
give or take, it's like $3,000 or so, 3,500 plus.
Right. It will naturally be lower, but we're also not spending the full amount of that. So the net to us is very
Right.
much positive.
Right.
Although at the detriment of
Depends on how you look at it.
having half of your full-time staff at the fire department.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
With that, thanks, Chad.
Yep.
With that, is there any questions overall on the financials?
I just noticed the insurance is the last 2 years, 2024 and 2025. It was on that original percentages graph. Has been way above what's been budgeted, and I know that's something you're working on for this year's budget.
Which one were you looking at? Was it here?
I think it was back, no, it was back about the third or fourth graph you showed us.
Oh, the miscellaneous right here.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the percentages are way up, and I know it's hard, and I know it's something you're working on
Yeah, Laura, I think Laura.
for the budget
some
this
of
year.
some of the problems that we have within insurance is basically whenever with the insurance that we have now is anytime we add in a vehicle or add anything on, they bill us, where we're looking at other options and stuff where it wouldn't change throughout the year. Plus so we are looking at different things as far as for next year. So, and then our workers' comp, that's part of that too, or whatever. The more we use it, the more our mod goes up, and then our insurance prices. And then they do an audit, which it's based on the salary. So we need to get better at, if we're increasing our salary, that we look forward at that to help that as well, because that increases it too.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? right.
Good there? Okay. I guess then, number 6, second period for public comment. Nothing there? Okay, then we'll get a motion to adjourn.
Does Todd will make a motion to adjourn?
This is Emma and I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, I guess that's it.